Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, Amanda Head. My co-host and Just the News editor-in-chief, John Solomon, is out on assignment tonight. As always, we're reporting to you from our Washington, D.C. studios. It is also the WiredToFishCoffee.com studios. Wired to Fish Coffee is the official coffee of Just the News. So head over to WiredToFishCoffee.com and get a 10% discount on all of their amazing products. Just use the code JustNews at checkout. All right, Democrats are starting to refine their message around the big, beautiful bill. And I got to be honest, I don't think that it is going to work very well with the American people, but I guess time will tell. And the Democrat strategy is nothing particularly new. They've decided to paint Republicans as heartless for cutting benefits to millions of people, or at least so they say. And it got to a point earlier today that somehow Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez blasted President Trump's no tax on tips policy. Watch.
As one of the only people in this body who has lived off of tips, I want to tell you a little bit about the scam of that text, a little bit of the fine print there. The cap on that is $25,000. While you're jacking up taxes on people who make less than $50,000 across the United States, while taking away their SNAP, while taking away their Medicaid, while kicking them off of the ACA and their health care extensions. So if you're at home and you're living off tips, you do the math.
Listen, I spent a good portion of my 20s waiting tables, and I would have really appreciated that policy on my tips. But if I'm AOC, there's probably something else that I could go after, something better than no tax on tips policy, even if the cap is at $25,000. Surely a tax break on American workers who rely on tips cannot be a bad thing, but it seems that that's one of the messages that they're going with. And Senator Chuck Schumer made an even worse pitch against Republican cuts yesterday. I'll let you figure out why. Take a listen.
We also know this is just the beginning. If DOJ attacks USAID today, then you can be sure they'll move on to another target tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the Postal Service or the IRS or even the Social Security Administration. They could be next. Or maybe our national security agencies.
I was really hoping that would be another clip of Chuck Schumer saying that Donald Trump incited insurrection. That was a really fun day in the news cycle last year. Anyway, cutting all of those agencies sounds like a pretty good deal to me, and I think that probably it sounds like a good deal to a lot of Americans. And House Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith pushed back on the narrative that Republicans are heartlessly cutting Medicaid and other programs. Take a listen.
What do you say right now to Americans, to people in your district who may lose their coverage? Are you prepared to stand behind this when and if it becomes law and they come to you as constituents extremely upset about losing their coverage?
Dana, more than 80% of the people in my congressional district believe in Medicaid work requirements for able-bodied, healthy adults, and that is in fact what this bill does. And that is what we're delivering on.
And I want to switch gears very quickly to some great reporting done by Just the News' very own Jerry Dunleavy, who posted this story over at justthenews.com earlier today. It was all about CIA Director John Ratcliffe's review that found that former CIA Director John Brennan had pushed to include the Steele dossier in their 2016 Russian influence assessment. And we now know that the Steele dossier was completely baseless, and Ratcliffe's report excoriated Brennan for including it as legitimate, concluding that the decision by agency heads to include the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment ran counter to fundamental tradecraft principles and ultimately undermined the credibility of a key judgment. So in the end, the dossier was included as a 2-page summary as an annex to the report with a further disclaimer that said that the dossier was not used to reach any conclusions. But if that's the case, then why was Brennan pushing so hard to include it? So as I said, you can read much more about that over on justthenews.com. All right. Time to get to my first guest of the day, the biggest story of the day here in Washington, the one big, beautiful bill. So joining me now, Republican Congresswoman from New York, Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman, thanks so much for coming back on the show. Good to see you.
Thank you. So great to be on. And what a wonderful series of clips that you picked out. Yeah, the Democrats really can't defend this bill, their criticisms of the bill. I mean, it's really pretty breathtaking.
Yeah, and I suppose that's why someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I mean, I know she wears it like a badge of honor, and I do too, because I actually love serving people. But as a server, and for her as a bartender, I'm actually kind of upset that I missed those years as a server when I could have had no taxes on tips. And I just don't know if that's the right message to resonate with New Yorkers, who it's a big service industry place.
Well, how about, the girl from Yorktown Heights that now says she's a Bronx girl or wherever she is?
Right.
Look, I was a waitress all through my college, law school days. That's what I did. And in some cases, I made $1 an hour. That just tells you how old I am. But you had to rely on tips,
Right.
to help me pay for my room, my board, my housing, or my expenses. Everything was through what I earned as a waitress and at a number of different restaurants and bars when I worked and studied. So, look, this is a great thing that President Trump is trying to do to help people who are really struggling, who rely on tipped income. And by the way, she comes from the one state that really cracks down on and requires tips to be included in the menu. Even they get included even if the customer doesn't actually put them in. So it's inured to the server, even if you don't get that money. And it puts a lot of it just makes it more difficult for the employer and the employee instead of really relying on tips. So it's one of the reasons I often pay tips in cash, because I want to avoid that unfair treatment of servers. So of all the people, she should be celebrating that.
That must be a former server thing, because I do the same thing as well. Just knowing the
I
value
know.
of good old cold hard cash.
I give more than 20% unless you're really bad.
That's a good threshold to have. Okay, so we were talking a little bit before the show, and it sounded like the numbers you had were within the 80th percentile, which is pretty darn good when it comes to the tax package that Ways and Means handled, but also the President Trump's agenda overall. Tell us about that.
Yeah, first this was an arduous task in Ways and Means. We're the main committee of jurisdiction on this. There were 11 altogether, but this is a tax bill, and it is about making sure that we continue the tax policy. So, we hemmed and hawed and argued and fought from members all across the United States on the Ways and Means Committee side. Sadly, the Democrats are not going to support a tax reduction for the American people. They're going to vote for the highest tax increase in American history on lower and middle income taxpayers. And oh, by the way, the wealthiest do not get a tax cut. Their taxes remain the same. We're helping small businesses. We're helping locally owned and operated businesses. We're helping individuals who are lower and middle income taxpayers. We're helping seniors who are dependent on Social Security. All these things have been debated. And by the way, when it went to the Senate, we got about, on the Ways and Means side of the entire bill, about 89% came back roughly the same. And on the President Trump's agenda side of the bill, about 85% of the Trump's agenda is in this bill. Now, is the bill perfect? No, we had to make compromises all over the place. The Senate made some good changes. They made some changes I don't like. And I think that, we came up with a product that has, it's good enough to be passed, and it's something that really advances the ball. And if we dither and we wait, and we have a few members who are sitting there saying we need to let perfect be the enemy of the good, we may get absolutely nothing, which would be catastrophic to the American people when it comes to tax increases, not funding the security we need at our border, not helping our troops, not unleashing American energy and get our energy underway. These are critical issues that are going to be unleashed by this bill. If we don't do it, we're going to get nothing, a big fat zero. That's why this bill has to go through. That's why President Trump is working so hard. The Speaker and our leadership team understand how important this is. This is not about whether it's conservative, whether we cut enough, because the question is, we are cutting more mandatory spending than has ever been cut in the history of the United States. It's happening in this bill. We can't cut the entire disastrous federal debt and deficit in one fell swoop that took decades to create, or else we'll have problems in our communities. We'll have carnage there. We'll have people who have relied on things. We've got to give an off-ramp that gives us a chance to keep our communities stable, to make sure that we get our tax cuts, that we grow the economy. All these things are very, very delicate issues. And that's why we've so carefully balanced those things when we come to what policies we've got in this bill.
The alternative to not passing it is a very, very bleak outcome.
It's grim.
It is. So for people like Thomas Massie, I understand he has a purity test that he pretty much uses for practically every legislation. It's why he's known as Mr. No. But like you said, I mean, even the border security alone, something that is so desperately needed after 4 years of an open border. How on earth can he, how can he vote no?
Look, I like Tom Massey personally. He's a charming guy. He's a friend of mine. I totally disagree with his ideology. You know, he takes this stance that he's and he leans into this on his social media, which, by the way, he monetizes and makes money off, that he's the only principled guy in Washington because he stands on a very extreme libertarian position. But you know what? Our founders were not libertarians. They actually rejected the notion, because what we need to do is, again, balance liberty and balance security. And that's what we get: ordered liberty, which is really what our country was founded on. If you look at the amalgam of all the different things that our founders brought to the table and all the things that make a self-governing constitutional republic work, we have to compromise in some places. And Tom wants a zero-sum game. It's 100% of what he wants or nothing. And so he's really not a Republican in the true sense of the word. He's a libertarian. And unfortunately, that's just not going to get him over the line. I mean, a nice guy, and I just disagree with him philosophically, as do I think he claims to be the constitutionalist. He's not really a constitutionalist. He's a libertarian, and our Constitution is not libertarian. So that's the way it is.
Yeah, those are two very different things. Speaking of the border, a really banner day, June 28th, marked the lowest single-day encounter record. Border Patrol encountered just 137 border crossers. This is not, people who were let into the country. This is just people who were met at the border. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and to think we haven't changed our laws, we're just enforcing them.
That's right.
We're just telling people, we're not welcome you to come illegally across the border. If you have a legitimate asylum claim, go to a port of entry. It's as simple as that. We're not flying people over the border and giving them safe refuge at the expense of the states and the local taxpayers, like Joe Biden did, and the night flights into places like New York State and others. We're not doing that. We're making sure that the American people are protected. We also, by the way, this is the other thing that really upsets me about the Democrats' message. We appreciate and revere, and we want to see legal immigration into this country. We welcome people who want to come and be part of this really special place where we have self-governance and we have freedom and we have free speech, and you don't have to, worry about a dictator or a tyranny that many people of these people are leaving. But we're also very tolerant. Come here legally, work, contribute to our society, be part of this great American dream. Look at how many millions of Americans have done that. So what President Trump is saying is just, look, come here legally, but we're not going to tolerate it if you don't come here legally. We can't have a society without rule of law. And rule of law is what makes it all work. It what makes us able to have self-governance. It what keeps us secure. It what makes people safe to raise their families and go to work and have a community where we can actually enjoy each other's company without worrying about being unsafe from foreign invaders. And you know what Joe Biden allowed? He allowed illegal gang members to profit, sickening. It's sickening. Profit off of human trafficking, drug trafficking, little children. You hear Tom Homan, who, by the way, is my constituent, talk about where are the 300,000 children who've been trafficked that are somewhere in the interior of the United States? Why aren't the Democrats crying about finding those children? That's who we're targeting. We know MS Gang 13 members and other Trende Aragua and other dangerous gang members are within our midst. They're all over our country. They're hiding. They're continuing their illegal, illicit, gang-like operations, really a form of organized crime, right in front of our noses. All we're doing is cracking down on those people and making sure that we have an orderly flow of people legally into our country who are going to get into the workforce, add to our communities, add to the great growth that we're going to see because of the one big beautiful bill. It's really just that simple. And the Democrats are crying and decrying all this, kings and everything else. It's really the opposite of what's happening. And that's how you can tell when the Democrats are lying. They project everything that's unreal. That's what they believe in, and that's what they project.
Yeah, Congresswoman, I have to get your take on this before I let you go. And I know it's city politics, but Zohran Mamdani, I have to imagine that your New York friends on the other side of the aisle, Democrats have got to be petrified of this guy, but this can't become the new Democrat Party.
Well, my new favorite Democratic Senator John Fetterman said it's Christmas in July for Republicans.
Yeah.
He's right. I just had a Democrat announce against me yesterday, and she is getting bombarded by the left-wing socialist Democrats, the so-called Democrats, Socialists of America, which, by the way, is the largest caucus in the New York State legislature.
Unreal.
I served there in 2016. There wasn't a single Democratic Socialist of America there. This is the base of the Democratic Party, and they are trying to dodge it. And we are going to make sure that everyone understands that the democratic socialism and this type of communist Marxist allegiance is the opposite of everything our country stands for, and the opposite of what legitimate, freedom-loving, whether they're natural-born citizens, new immigrants, it's the opposite of what we believe in and what we dream of when we come to this community and this society. It's a hellscape for Democrats. Let's hope that the Republicans can articulate this message, and let people see the truth about Mamdani.
Absolutely. Let the clips go viral. I'm quite enjoying it. It's sad, but
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. New York Congresswoman Claudia
Absolutely.
Tenney, always a joy to have you here. Thank you so much
Thanks.
for being here.
Thanks so much,
Absolutely.
Amanda.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Next, Congressman Marlin Stutzman is going to be here to give his take on the changes to President Trump's big, beautiful bill. Is it going to be able to pass the House? We're going to get to that next. Celebrate Independence Day with an epic July 4th sale. Stock up on all of the best supplements from BrickHouseNutrition.com and save a big 25% off everything with code FIREWORKS25. Get Lean, their #1 weight loss supplement packed with natural, studied ingredients. No injections, just real results to help you slim down for summer. Or try Field of Greens, the superfood drink so powerful they guarantee your doctor will notice your boosted health or your money back. Collagen peptides are another fan favorite for glowing skin and hair. Beauty experts say collagen is the fountain of youth for skin and hair. So from weight loss to wellness, Brickhouse Nutrition has it all, and our listeners can't stop raving. The sale is huge, but it is only here for a few days, and products are definitely going to sell out. So don't wait. Head over to BrickHouseNutrition.com and use the code FIREWORKS25 for 25% off. Let's go. This big 4th of July sale. Go there. BrickHouseNutrition.com. Stock up now. Welcome back to Just the News, No Noise. The phrase on everyone's lips here in the nation's capital is still the one big, beautiful bill. But there's some concern that the Senate version of the bill is a little less beautiful than before. So joining us now to talk about all of that and much more is Indiana Congressman Marlin Stutzman. Congressman, thank you so much for being here, sir.
Great to be with you, Amanda.
All right, so it sounds to me like it came back to you guys with a little less luster than it had when it left. How do you feel about it?
It definitely did. I mean, being on the Budget Committee and working on the big, beautiful bill over the last several months, I felt like the product that left the House was really strong. I mean, Speaker Mike Johnson, again, I'll just give him a lot of credit for keeping a small majority in the House really unified. Has been very impressive to watch. In fact, I'm not going to just throw the Senate under the bus, but in a way, it's like they came back with more debt and a couple of other pieces that are frustrating, but at the same time, there's a lot of good pieces. As Claudia Tenney said earlier, about 85% of the bill has Trump's agenda in it. And that's what I think is really important here, is to make sure that we move the Trump agenda forward. While I don't like more debt in here, I do think that it's important at some point, through some discussions and negotiations about maybe future bills. And that's what a lot is happening right now, is these conversations may not particularly change the big, beautiful bill, but it's going to set us up for the next bills that come to us, maybe in a rescissions package or the budget bills or the appropriations bills that we'll deal with in the next couple of weeks. So we can maybe make some changes there. But overall, we have to make sure these tax cuts stay in place, get the funding for the border, get the funding for military, Golden Dome funding's in it. And so there's a lot of good in it. It just takes some of us a little bit of time to get over our frustration after it came back from the Senate.
Yeah, absolutely. And from what I hear from President Trump, it sounds like more rescissions packages are something that he's really looking forward to. I want to ask you, though, because the alternative to this not passing is that largest tax hike in American history. And I know that that's going to get blamed on Republicans, even though Democrats obviously all are voting against this bill. It's going to get blamed on Republicans. And that's not a good place to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, not at all. In fact, on average, if the Trump tax cuts expire at the end of 2025, the average American family would see about a $3,200 increase in taxes next year. And it's just not acceptable because, while we do have our deficit problems, I don't think it should fall back on the American taxpayer at this point. I mean, this economy is very delicate right now. While there are, bright spots here and there, I think President Trump and his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, have got a very good handle on the direction they want to go. This tariff policy is going to be good for bringing jobs back to the United States. And, where I come from in the Midwest, often referred to as the Rust Belt, I've seen those jobs leave over the last several decades, manufacturing jobs leaving and going overseas. I think that's what President Trump, and I agree with him 100%, is focusing on bringing those jobs back. That's going to help grow this economy and get us back up to that 3% GDP number that we really need to be at. So raising taxes would be just a detriment to not only to the American family, but also to the federal budget.
Absolutely. I want to ask you about the hair raising that Democrats are doing about Medicaid, because many Americans, as Claudia Tenney was just talking about, the vast majority of Americans support an able-bodied requirement to receive those benefits. But not only that, you have illegal immigrants who are on this, which, as I understand, there was a little bit of confusion about this out of the Senate. Apparently, they did still keep the provision that takes millions of illegals off of it. So that's great. But where do you stand on what the Democrats are saying? Because to me, it sounds like it's patently not true, but I haven't read the whole bill.
No, this is the Democrats fear-mongering. In fact, sitting in the Budget Committee, some of the things that they say on the other side of the aisle are just patently false. And it's so disingenuous. And I think that's why people just finally turn off Washington, because they don't know what to believe. But I'll tell you what, I think their lies are becoming so extreme that the American people are finally saying, you know what, that's just not believable. And one of the things that we know from before is when Democrats told us that they were going to fix health care with passing Obamacare, it hasn't worked. In fact, that's why there's more people on Medicaid today than ever before, because Obamacare has been an utter failure. We've seen the cost of health care going up rather than coming down. And they promised, again, they were going to, fix the cost of health care. So this is the Democrats just simply fear-mongering, trying to scare the American people that they're going to lose their health insurance because of these reforms. Again, if you're illegal, you're going to lose if you are on Medicaid, you're going to lose it. If you're an able-bodied individual, you're not going to be allowed to be on Medicaid because you can work. And so this is where the reforms have to come in. And I don't know if you just saw recently, the Department of Justice, in fact, just yesterday, announced a major scam that's been going on, about 300 people indicted over a $14 billion scam that has been going on. And so when Republicans say there's waste, fraud, and abuse, there really is. And the Department of Justice is finding it. And I think we're going to see more and more of this over the next several years under the Trump administration, because Trump is determined to not only save and strengthen Medicaid and Medicare, but also to root out waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yeah, I think when they named it USAID, they did that on purpose so it would sound like U.S. aid, when in fact it just seems to me like it's been money laundering for liberal causes.
Yeah.
Timeline-wise, so President Trump obviously wanted this on his desk by Friday. It doesn't sound to me like that's going to happen. What do you think?
Well, I'm actually optimistic tonight.
Okay.
I mean, there are still some there's some negotiations going on. Russ Vought, the OMB director, was just here at the Capitol meeting with individuals. I think it's too risky to send the bill back to the Senate at this point because the Senate's already left town. We can come back and meet again next week, which we're scheduled to do. And there's going to be rescissions packages, as you discussed. There's going to be appropriations packages. We can still make changes in those particular bills. So this isn't the last bill that Congress is going to pass this year. There's going to be other opportunities, and I think we need to focus on those. But let's get this bill across the finish line so that way people, especially small businesses, can plan what their tax rates are going to be for 2026 and beyond.
Yeah. Congressman, people in the Senate get paid to be in Washington, and on behalf of all Americans, don't feel bad at all about making them come back and do the work, because you guys certainly put in the work. You guys, I think, created as you said, a really good product, and I hope that this can get passed through very, very soon, because that tax hike is. We're staring down the business end of a boning knife, and it's not fun. Indiana Congressman Marlin Stutzman, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
You bet. Great to be with you. Thank you.
Likewise. Yes, sir. All right. Coming up after the break, General Michael Flynn is going to be here to discuss how President Trump is remaking the Middle East, as well as his new book, Pardon of Innocence. That's next. People spend up to half of their waking hours on their smartphones, and big tech reaps trillions from that time while users get absolutely nothing. Mode Mobile is flipping that script. Founded by Dan Novias, Mode Mobile created the Earn Phone. It is a smartphone that pays users simply for doing what they already do: reading, gaming, listening to music, even charging their phones. It's part of a new digital equity model where users finally share in the value of their attention. But why now? 56% of Americans don't have $1,000 in savings, and 45% rely on side hustles just to make ends meet. Mode Mobile has already delivered over $325 million in earnings and savings to more than 50 million users worldwide, earning the title of fastest growing company in software on Deloitte's 2025 list with $75 million in lifetime revenue. And Mode isn't just a hardware company, it's building a platform to license its Earn OS to global carriers and phone makers, unlocking scalable, high-margin growth while reaching underserved markets worldwide. Big tech has monetized attention for decades. Mode Mobile is giving that power back to the people. And they recently closed an oversubscribed $46 million plus funding round and have already reserved their NASDAQ stock ticker. But private investors can still get in ahead of the public market. This is a very rare pre-IPO opportunity to invest in one of the world's largest untapped markets: personal screen time. Learn more at invest.modemobile.com/realamerica. That's invest.modemobile.com/realamerica. Welcome back to Just the News, No Noise. President Trump has certainly not taken his time on the foreign policy front. So far, he has brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Iran in the Middle East after taking out Iran's nuclear facilities. He's also figured out a way to get Israel to agree to a ceasefire deal with Hamas. We're now just waiting to see what Hamas will do. So how has the president been able to so much and be so effective? How's he been able to do it while pushing back against the deep state at the same time? Joining us now to talk about all of that, President Trump's former national security advisor, retired Army Lieutenant General, and best-selling author of his new book. It's called Pardon of Innocence, and it has been endorsed by President Trump himself. General Michael Flynn. General, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Absolutely, Amanda. Thank you so much. Thanks for all that you guys do at Just the News. Amazing. I mean, really amazing what you guys have achieved in really a short period of time over the last few years. So thanks for all that you're doing.
Well, right back at you. And our audience just absolutely loves you. I was just talking to my producer saying we have to have General Flynn on more often. As I was reading through that introduction, it kind of, it's surreal. It puts things a little bit in perspective when you list off all of the accomplishments just this term, not even the Abraham Accords from the first term, and not even just the Middle East. One of my favorite restaurants around here, our server, was going back to Kashmir to spend time with his family. So it spans the globe, the things that President Trump has been able to accomplish. Do you think he'll get recognition for it from people who have been his detractors in the past?
Yeah, I do believe he's going to get recognized. I mean, you have the government of Pakistan is recommending him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah. People tend to forget that it was only a couple of months ago that he brokered the peace deal between India and Pakistan, who are two nuclear powers. Right. So that was a big, big deal. And those are two giant nation states that were at each other's throats. And Trump stepped in and said, with just his leadership, his strong leadership and the backing of the American people, and he stepped in, and that stopped that war overnight. And I think it was just about a month ago. In fact, it was during the Iran-Israel fighting that the government of Pakistan recommended Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. I know that there are a bunch of other people, and there are some other nations that are stepping up. But you know, the situation in the Middle East is another dilemma that that Trump has, I think, acted appropriately. And one of the things that I had mentioned to him was to trust his instincts, and I think that his instincts have always been very good. I think from the beginning, well before he even ran for president, even before he decided to run for president back in 2015 timeframe, he was talking about the fact that Iran should never have any nuclear weapons, and he's been very consistent. And he's continued to say that. You know, he's continued to watch the intelligence. The one thing that I would say as a reminder to your audience, and frankly to Trump too, and all the people that are in the negotiations, my mother said something to me a long time ago. She said, my mother was a lawyer. She's a great smart woman, and she said, "Don't trust anybody, not even your mother." And when it comes to negotiations, a mother of 9 children, when it comes to negotiations in the Middle East, that is very, very good guidance. Because
Indeed.
you have fatwas being issued by the Khomeini regime. You've got Hamas, who hasn't responded to the essentially the agreement that was reached between Israel and Hamas. They haven't responded yet. We will see, you know, like Trump likes to say sometimes, we'll see what happens here, right? And the one thing that is clear is that the nuclear program for Iran was set back tremendously. And all the noise from the left and all the leakers that are still in the deep state inside of the administration, doesn't make any difference what they say. The pounding, the amazing capability that we demonstrated, that the United States military demonstrated in the destruction of the nuclear program and the setting of it back, I mean, probably years. And what a lot of people don't know about me, Amanda, is I was at U.S. Central Command for a lot number of years actually in the region, and so I watched in the late 2000, let's just say 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 time frame. So in that 5-year period of time, I actually watched the places like Fordow and Natanz, Esfahan being built. So I know the structures of what those things are and what they are capable of doing from there, and what it would take to actually destroy those things. We've been through our own targeting solutions over many years to figure that out when I was in the military. So I think what the president did to demonstrate a quality and a quantity of strength that was sort of just right, it not only sent a message to Iran, but it also sent a message to the Middle East. You mentioned the Abraham Accords earlier, and I think that that's a real strength of Trump's first administration. Those countries in the Middle East, they will want to get back on track with that. And they'll want to get back on track with Israel as well. You're going to see a lot of, backroom applauding of the way the Israelis handled the military side of their operations against Iran. I mean, an incredible, exquisite level of military command and control, intelligence, targeting, logistics, the whole gamut. And all of those countries looking at that, I know that they were amazed, because most of them, in fact, I would say all of them, cannot do it to the level that the Israelis could and can. So that's another sign of, for those countries that are in the Middle East to say, hey, look, let's stop this madness of constant conflict, and let's go to a place where we can really have a discussion about peace and about reconstruction or building and improving lives. I mean, I'm one of the worst ones to talk about, Islam. I've written a book on that, another national bestseller on that called Field of Fight. And, it's how to win the war against radical Islam and its allies, the allies being China, Russia. I wrote that book back in 2015 and 2016. And the alliance against the West has not changed much. What has changed is the fact that now Donald Trump has been twice the president of the United States, and the second time he's only into his six months here. And I think earlier you were talking about the bill back, or the big beautiful bill, and where it's at right now back in the House. I mean, what we get out of that is a strength of the U.S. economy, and these other countries are paying close attention. So this business about Vietnam, cutting deals with Vietnam, and I think Trump put that out today. We have China on the ropes. We have Russia. Russia, many people don't know this, but Russia is relooking its military production, okay? So Russia reported today in various circles that they are relooking the manufacturing or the production of their military capabilities, weaponry and arms and ammunition and such. That is a big indicator that the Russians and their economy is also having a difficult time, because at a certain point in time, you just can't afford these wars any longer. And frankly, what does Trump want? Trump doesn't want to go take over their countries. He doesn't want regime change like everybody, was screaming for in some cases. And a lot of people in his own party, in I call it the Uniparty there in Washington, D.C., all the neocons, they want regime change in Moscow, right? Then what? Then what do you do, right? Then what happens? And we've already learned from regime change that we have been involved in that they don't work. They really, really don't work. So Trump is forcing the discussion globally about how do we achieve peace. You can either work with us or we will be your worst enemy.
That's right.
And Trump is a really loyal guy if you want to work with him and
That's right.
And be in his circle.
Yeah, it has just been absolutely incredible to watch. And your commentary is so good. We've got to get you back on very soon, because I had at least 4 other questions that I wanted to ask you. So we'll do that again very soon. General Michael Flynn, author of the new book, Pardon of Innocence. Everybody go out and buy it, and all his other books too. Thank you so much for joining me, General. All right, next we're going to talk about the economy, because by a lot of metrics, it's not doing very well. So we still have foreign actors like China looking to try and devalue the United States dollar. That is after this break. Welcome back, everybody. We've seen some financial ups and downs in the last few months, and I'm sure that we are going to see more, because that's how it goes. And as we wait for the one big beautiful bill to be passed, that's obviously going to play a part in it too. But President Trump has gotten some huge wins on the economy, with the stock market now surpassing record highs. However, the U.S. dollar has had to do some major fluctuations, and there's some news on U.S. Treasuries that you're going to want to hear as well. So joining us now to explain, the CEO of American Alternative Assets, Shannon Davis. Shannon, great to have you back. Good to see you.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for having me back, and good to see you, Amanda.
Likewise. All right. So China just up and sells, what, $8 trillion in U.S. Treasuries? What is this?
It abruptly sold 8.2 billion in U.S. Treasuries as the dollar extends massive losses. China's U.S. Treasury holdings haven't dropped to this level since 2009. They sold $8 billion in April. They've dropped now to the third largest holding, right behind the UK now, which, interesting enough, UK wants their gold back that we've been storing for them since the Cold War. So lots of things happening. And the market's had a historical run here for this short period, but all it's really done is make back the gains it lost when we put the tariffs on. He paused them, but those are getting ready to be unpaused come Tuesday of next week. So just like you said, get ready for the ups and the downs. They're going to continue to happen.
Yeah. So when you have a nation sell billions of dollars worth of treasuries, does that indicate a lack of confidence in our economy that they have? Why would they do that?
Yeah, it's exactly it. You absolutely nailed it. Trust has been weakening, but it's the 20th century now, and things have changed drastically. I know some may believe that these other countries are struggling or they're scared, but they're silently positioning themselves right where they want to. I mean, over this time, that China, over the last, 2, 3, 4 years now, has been dumping treasuries. They've also been acquiring 200 tons of gold. Gold is more desirable than ever now. So there's strategies on both ends.
So if I know President Trump and his personality, for another nation to disrespect the United States by making an action that shows their lack of confidence in our economy, I have to imagine that that ticks him off quite a bit. But does it have anything to do with Trump?
It really doesn't. Look, Trump's going to respond at face value. Yeah, it looks good. But again, at the end of the day, all of these economies, ours included, they've come to a screeching halt. It really comes down to the dollar bill. It's off to its worst start since the early 70s. It's dropped 11% in value. Trump knows that clearly. That's why he's positioning to, at some point, change our monetary system. The dollar is just no longer, what it used to be, and all regimes, all empires come to an end. It's been like that for 600 years now.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting.
So when it comes to gold, I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine recently, and he was asking me if we do own some gold in a little safe somewhere, not in our
Nice.
house. But he was wink, wink. We were talking about, the prospect of him buying gold, and he's like, why? And I said, well, effectively, practically speaking, it never goes down. So if you can buy some now, it's just really only ever going to go out. Obviously, you have slight fluctuations week to week, day to day, month to month, but we're not really not even month to month, right? I mean, it's really just day to day and week to week. And but consistency, the thread line is always going up.
Exactly. If you look at the history of gold and silver over the last 20 years, gold's up nearly 700%, which is give or take about 33% annually. And yes, you have your fluctuations, and that's because of the stock market, because of paper gold, paper assets. They have to liquidate these option positions, these future contracts that are being held. And so that's why you'll see that markets are strong or job reports are strong, goes down. Uncertainty globally, geopolitically, it goes up. But it doesn't fluctuate drastically. To answer why, it's preservation. It's to preserve your wealth and your purchasing power. The dollar bills that people have in their bank accounts or in their investments accounts are not the same dollars that they're taking out 5 years later, if they're even dollar bills anymore.
Right.
Gold and silver always will be gold and silver. It's real money. I mean, Texas, for example, they just got it approved where literally you're going to have a debit card backed with gold and silver.
I know. It's so great. It's like the ultimate bling. It's so great. Shannon Davis.
Yeah, instead of pulling out a diamond out of your pocket, you're pulling out basically a gold or silver credit card.
Yeah,
physical.
It's so very cool. We love everything that you do over at American Alternative Assets, and obviously this deal. I always love saying the website, johnlikesgold.com, or call 855-GOLD-340 to get your guide now. That's 855-465-3340. Shannon Davis, CEO of American Alternative Assets, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And to our viewers, if you want to learn more about American Alternative Assets, again, go to johnlikesgold.com or call 855-GOLD-340 to get your guide now. That's 855-465-3340 or johnlikesgold.com. We'll be right back.
It's almost Independence Day, and all of America will be celebrating. But here in Real America's Voice, we want to celebrate you. Every day from June 30th through July 4th, we're giving away a handcrafted, hand-painted hardwood flag to one lucky RAV viewer. These beautiful flags come from YourAmericanFlagStore.com, where 10% of every purchase goes to Your American Flag Foundation. Scan the QR code to opt in for your chance to win and receive future RAV promotions from our hearts for your home. Use code RAV for free shipping.
Welcome back, everybody. Final segment of the show. Let's hit it. All right, time to turn our attention to American energy, specifically what the big, beautiful bill has to say about it, specifically solar. And we know that America has to produce much more energy to win the AI war against China, and China has been investing heavily in solar. Is it worth it for the United States too, as well? And what about our, these personal solar panels that you see on people's houses? Joining me now to discuss it all, Policy Director at Solar United Neighbors, Glenn Brand. Glenn, thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here, Rametta.
All right, so I hail from California. I see tons of houses there with these solar panels on them. It seems like, especially for private use, it's becoming a lot more popular. Now, separate that away from the commercial use where they raid fields and stuff and put a bunch of solar panels out there. I'm setting that aside, but to have it on people's houses, it seems to be really ticking up in popularity. Is that reflected in the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Well, as you said, and it's not just California, of course, but residential rooftop solar, it's a rapidly growing technology. It's popular because it allows families to reduce their energy bills, their utility bills, and increase their home's energy security and claim their energy freedom. That's why there are over 5 million rooftop solar systems across the US. And that represents, just to give you a sense of the scale, that represents 36 gigawatts of capacity. 1 gigawatt is equal to about what a typical nuclear reactor produces. So 36 nuke plants. It's a lot of power. And unfortunately, the Senate bill passed yesterday is going to drive up energy costs and put solar out of reach for millions across the US. One estimate says a 7% average hike in energy prices. And there are others out there that are pretty similar. And then specifically what the Senate bill does is repeal the 30% residential solar tax credit by the end of this year. And that's going to make it much more difficult for people to afford to go solar. Of course, if you have a $24,000 system, rooftop system, for example, well, 30% of that is $8,000. So a solar system is going to become $8,000 more expensive next year than this year. So that's going to have a big impact. That means fewer people are going to invest in solar. And that means the solar installers and suppliers are going to reduce their workforce, and many are going to go out of business. And the vast majority of residential solar installers are local small businesses, and they're the ones that are going to be hurt the most. So that's the problem with what the Senate has done. And just to be clear, this 30% residential tax credit was on the books in 2005. This is not a part of the IRA. This was passed under the George W. Bush administration and that Congress, and has been renewed numerous times. It was due to be phased out by 2032, and this bill would eliminate it in 6 months. So that's the concern here. If there's really only two ways to reduce your energy bills. One is to use less energy through energy efficiency, insulation in your home and, smarter, better appliances and that kind of thing. And then the other is to have cheaper fuel, and solar provides free fuel. And so if you take those two options away, by the way, the 30% tax credit also applied to energy efficiency for consumers, then what's somebody to do? They're going to be stuck paying the higher and continually rising energy prices that the utilities charge us with.
Yeah, it's incredible. Okay, so taking away that 30% tax hike, so does that mean if you already have solar, then it doesn't affect them? Does it affect them too?
No, if you already have solar, you've already taken your 30% tax credit, and good for you. But if you want to go solar, you really have 6 months to do it if you want that tax credit.
Yeah, so get on
otherwise, next year, if you don't have that, upfront money, as many of us don't, then it's going to be even harder to afford it. And
What
that's
is
a
the
shame
typical
because
upfront
it doesn't
cost?
just help the individual who now saves money in their electricity, but we're going to need, in an age of growing energy demand, we're going to need every electron.
Absolutely.
And the grid is under stress for all kinds of complicated reasons. And so we can't say no. And all of the above energy strategy, in our view, has got to include solar. It's not the only thing, but it's got to include solar. And from a consumer's point of view, which is what I care about the most, if you take away the tax credit, which was due to sunset in 2032 anyway, you're just going to make it much more difficult for people, and and then they're going to be stuck with higher energy bills. I can't recall ever my utility lowering my rates, and that's why we're stuck.
Yeah. On this show, we talk to people from the coal industry, from natural gas, petroleum, across the board, and they all talk about the tapestry that is the American energy producer's climate, and that, as you said, includes solar. We've only got about 45 seconds left. I wanted to ask you, so if this is not included in the Senate bill, are you talking to people in the House, or is someone talking to people in the House about making sure it's back in there?
Yeah, well, we're asking, the House to make changes to restore the tax credit, or maybe extend, at least a few years out so there's more predictability for the tax credit. That would be a sounder way to do this than an abrupt cliff. And so we're encouraging everyone, solar owners or somebody who want to become a solar owner, to contact their House member and tell them they want the right to be able to go solar. They want that energy and solar independence and freedom that solar provides. And so we set up a website. I'll plug it if you don't mind. It's savesolar.org. And makes it easy for people to click and send a message to their House member. And you got to do this now because they're debating the bill.
Right. That's
and
right.
They're likely to vote on it tomorrow.
Happening as we speak. Glenn Brand, Policy Director at Solar United Neighbors. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. All right, everybody, we will not be here tomorrow night because President Trump has a rally in Iowa, and we've got a whole crew flying out there. It's going to be amazing rally coverage like it used to be in the good old days when President Trump was campaigning, so you're going to want to make sure you tune in for that. But we will be back for